Finally, Boris Johnson's defence, his version of events has landed. It is a 50 or so page dossier, and we will get through the details in a moment. But first, let's just remind you what all of this is about. Obviously, we know Partygate was a scandal that effectively brought down Boris Johnson, a Prime Minister with an 80-seat majority. The Privileges Committee are looking at whether he recklessly misled Parliament when he said this.
All guidance was followed completely during number 10.
I have been repeatedly assured since these allegations emerged that there was no party and that no COVID rules were broken. I'm sickened myself and furious about that. But I repeat what I have said to him, that I have been repeatedly assured that the rules were not broken. The guidance was followed and the rules were followed at all times.
Now, it's worth saying, in their interim report, the Privileges Committee said that it must have been obvious, suggested it must have been obvious to Boris Johnson at the time that COVID rules were being broken. Well, let's have a look at some of his defence, which obviously contrasts to that. Here, he says, the committee also now appears to be alleging that it was in some way reckless for me to rely on assurances that I received from trusted advisers. That allegation is unprecedented and absurd. I was the Prime Minister of the country, working day and night to manage the government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. It was self-evidently reasonable for me to rely on assurances that I received from my adviser. The suggestion to the contrary would have profound and debilitating implications for the future debate in the House and for the ability of ministers to rely on the advice of their officials when answering questions in Parliament. So I think you sort of get a sense of the tone from Boris Johnson here. He does seem quite angry. Really, the nub of his argument is that he wasn't warned, saying that he was looking to advice from his advisers. I'll read you a second bit. For the 18th of December 2020 event, I relied on assurances I had received from my advisers, and it is clear now those assurances were wrong. As Prime Minister, I am reliant on advice from officials. There is nothing reckless or unreasonable about that. I was focused on difficult decisions concerning the pandemic as well as other business that the Prime Minister needs to address. My diary is packed. Number 10 is a complex environment, and I was constantly in and out of the building. My knowledge of what was going on at any given time was imperfect and mostly second-hand. So that really, I think, goes to the core of Boris Johnson's evidence. Number 10 is a massive machine. He didn't know everything that was going on. It was the middle of a pandemic. He was busy. He was relying on advice from his advisers, basically saying he knows now that the rules were broken, but at the time he wasn't warned. He didn't do anything, basically, in bad faith. And that is really what we've been hearing from his allies as well. Two sort of strands to their defence. One, this issue of advice, but secondly, about the sort of validity of the process itself and the Privileges Committee, which, as you were saying, 4 Conservative MPs are on the Privileges Committee. The chair of the committee is Labour's Harriet Harman. Let's have a listen to what one of Boris Johnson's long-time allies, James Duddridge, has to say.
People do mislead the House by accident. You know, you misspeak. If you say you have to understand every single nuance and you're going to be held to account based on new facts received and punished on that basis, ministers will simply come to the dispatch box and say, I can't possibly comment, we're going to have an inquiry, I can't talk about that. And that's really, really corrosive when they're actually really genuinely trying to do a good job, share openly the best information, and allow other people to critique that and come up with a better solution. If this committee says that, you know, we're changing the rule books here, we're going on whether something was just misled as opposed to intentionally, or this new term, reckless, that will damage the way we do politics, and it will mean ministers effectively having to gag themselves in front of the House of Commons.
So what happens now? Well, the Privileges Committee will be grilling the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson for 4 hours tomorrow. That will be a blockbuster moment. Sparks will be flying. What does it mean for the current Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak? Well, we know that Boris Johnson has long loomed over the man who took over. I don't think Boris Johnson being the centre of attention is ever really good for Rishi Sunak. The Privileges Committee will then make a decision, recommend any punishment if they do decide he recklessly misled Parliament. That could be something like an apology, or it could be something more serious, like a suspension from the House, even in the worst-case scenario leading to a by-election in Boris Johnson's constituency of Uxbridge. We're not there yet. That would certainly be the worst-case scenario for the Prime Minister, but his political career does hang in the balance.